Okay, we will start with this anyway. Framing compliance policies and procedures. Yeah, I think I remember talking about this different controls. Right. So these are the basically the key areas to be covered in the compliance policies, right? So the ML CFT requirement is extremely important because the if you fail to do that, the repercussions are very serious, right? So you would have learned in the other modules what AML CFT regime requirements are. So failure to do that will create very embarrassing and then disastrous repercussions for the organization as well as for its members and the staff and all that, uh, which could get extended up to the fines, cancellation of license, and then bad reputation from individual corporate liabilities like paying penalties. Uh, then when it comes to the personal level, personally you will be responsible. The board will be responsible. The management will be responsible. The compliance officer will be responsible, and the staff involved in the process also will be responsible. So depending on the nature, it can get extended up to your personal assets, personal fines, and all that, and also rigorous imprisonment for a period between 5 to 20. So AML requirements that you have to definitely take into account. The outsourcing of business operations, there's a direction. So you need to fall in line with those. There are various requirements, right? Then the whistleblowing procedures, right? How the whistleblowing procedure has been recognized by the organization, how it has been implemented, or either it is just a kind of a book confined to books, or is it actually happening? All this is important. Then the fit and proper requirements. So we discussed whether the persons appointed to run the key positions are they fit and are they proper? Do they have the necessary skills, competencies, expertise to do that, and how is their integrity, whether they have been blacklisted for various other permissions and omissions, all that will be taken into account. Then the training and competence requirements, right? How the training is to be provided. Training is extremely important when the compliance function is being talked about, because you need to train your staff. When I say you, I'm not referring only to the compliance. You have to train the whole staff, especially in terms of AML CFT. You have to train them because that's a legal requirement under the FTRA section 14 that have been casted on the compliance officer of the bank. So it's though in conventional type of environment, the training is parked on the HR as a training division. But remember, when it comes to compliance regime, the main responsibility of giving that awareness, training people, training your staff, and making awareness, all that comes and lands in the lap of the compliance officer. So the compliance officer, you may take the support from the training division, the HR division, or for that matter, you can get support from everybody. But remember, the training of your staff, giving them the necessary awareness on the MLCFT requirements and to create the MLCFT regime within your organization. Personally, it lies with the compliance officer because it's a legal requirement that have been enforced on him under Section 14 of the FTRA, Financial Transaction Reporting Act, number 6 of 2006. Right. So then training, you have to pay very special attention. Those who are in banks and working in the compliance might agree with me. You all the banks have the correspondent banking relationship. You maintain your Vostro Nostro accounts with other foreign banks in order to facilitate international transactions, foreign trade, and all that. You need to have this correspondent banking relationship. So every year, each bank needs to carry out a kind of due diligence exercise on the other counterpart, right? So especially then for us, a country like Sri Lanka, that responsibility lies with both the banks. Now, say you have a relationship with the foreign bank to carry out that due diligence in order to make sure that the counterpart, if you take Sri Lanka to see whether the HSBC, Hong Kong and Shanghai Banking Corporation, if you have a correspondent banking relationship, so the Bank of China or Exim Bank or whatever it is, if you have a relationship, you need to make sure that they also have their regulation, rule, the procedure, the regime in order to meet the international standards in the AML CFT. So that's a requirement. So likewise, they also have a responsibility on their part to make sure that the Sri Lankan bank with whom, or maybe your bank, with whom they maintain that correspondent banking relationship, stick to the guns, having their procedures and the MLCFT regime very well placed in the organization. So they also have to carry out this exercise due diligence, right? Since we are small bank, generally what happens is they come and see whether we are doing it right. So we have to be ready with our stuff to prove them and give them that assurance that yes, we are fully compliant on the MLCFT. So the training, the point I'm trying to take is the training is one important aspect that they always come and look at, right? So they sometimes these sessions go and extended up to 2 hours, 3 hours. It's so intense discussions that they carry out. Sometimes they come when there was a time that they physically visited you. They want to see the record. They want to see how many people have been trained, what methodologies you have. Suppose your bank has, say, 5,000, 5,000 staff. They will definitely want to know how did you train this 4,000, 5,000 staff? What are the records you have? Whether you have the LMS system, the learning management system, or some distant training methodologies, whatever it is. So you have to have these things. So therefore, training and the competence requirements is extremely important when framing the compliance policies and procedures. So the capital adequacy requirements, I think we discussed this in detail, how your bank is meeting the capital adequacy. That is in order to ensure the stability of the bank, the sustainability of the bank, the going concern of the bank. So the compliance need to make sure that all these are taken into consideration, taken into account when framing the compliance policies and procedures. Conflict of interest. How do you manage conflict of interest within your organization? Right? The staff, senior management are under duty to avoid conflict of interest. So example for a conflict of interest, mainly like, we very closely monitor the related party transactions, right? So where the conflict of interest can come and, plug into your system. So it's likewise, when you are having the framing the compliance policies and procedures, you need to make sure that this conflict of interest aspect is given due the attention in order to avoid that taking place within the organization. Then moving to the next, the confidential requirement, the banker's duty of secrecy, data protection. Just an example, right? How do you maintain the banker's duty of secrecy, right? So as per the Banking Act direction, the banker's duty of secrecy is not, it's not in law, it says it's not absolute, but it's qualified. It's not absolute but qualified. Why do you say that? Right? Because there are certain conditions under which that you can breach this duty of secrecy in the interest of the bank, in the interest of the country, then by compulsion of law, then on the written or implied consent of the customer, and in the interest of the country, right? So under these circumstances, you can breach this duty of secrecy. That's why you say it's not a absolute requirement, but a qualified requirement. So then so you need to make sure that how your organization, because though it is coming under the framing of compliance policies and procedures, it's not a subject that will come and which you would handle directly. You will have to get involved with your organization, maybe the operations, maybe network or whatever it is, whoever who handles it, to make sure that these procedures are there within the bank. So that's a important compliance requirement. Because what happens is the simple thing, if it is said that, okay, the confidential requirements uh, are totally being ignored by this bank, it's a bad reputation. So it's a issue for compliance. It's an issue for compliance. So therefore, bank, when you're framing it, it may not be a direct function of you, but you need to make sure that those are there. But generally, the banking practice, the time tested procedures, what we have got from the our business law is English law. So there are many case laws that talks about this subject. So these are basically captured into your manual of operation, right? So, but then make sure that these things do apply properly. Then the data protection extremely important in the today's environment. So the attention given by compliance on the data protection is relatively low, but it's important that the compliance needs to look at it more, kind of get more involved in this, right? So now I told you we are going to have some the group exercises. We are going to have certain the topics given to each group. So most likely we will touch on it today. So this is going to be one subject that's going to be taken up and then studied and presented by one group. How are you making sure that your data protection, because this program does not cover that aspect in the syllabus, but then since it's important, but since it's a fact, probably most likely I will give it as a topic to one group in order to study this and then make their presentation so that the others will also benefit, right? So the data protection is extremely important when you are framing your compliance policies and procedures. Then the market abuse, right? How the market will be abused. I will touch on this subject in detail when I'm talking about the next module, like the corporate governance and then the governance requirements. I will at least briefly try to touch on the market abuse. If I forget it, please do remember. I will take it up and then give you, because it's important from a compliance point of view, how you would, what market abuse is, and how you would avoid this happening inside the dealings and things like that, right? Then the disclosure requirements, extremely important. How? Because there are various disclosure requirements that you need to comply with, starting from your financial statement, starting from your qualitative statement. You need to disclose the CSR and, various disclosures that you need to make, which are extremely regulatory, right? So you need to take that into account. Now, when you talk about your financials, yes, you have to fall in line with the Sri Lanka accounting standards, which have been set by the Institute of Chartered Accountants, right, which is stemming from the IFR, International Financial Reporting Standard, right? So those are certain sets. Then the regulator, they themselves have enforced certain regulatory requirements to be complied by the bank, right? Then in the international best practices, going according to the Basel Code, right? So you have to do certain disclosures, central bank statement that you submit. Those are also part of your disclosures. And from the audit point of view, there are certain disclosures. We call it as per the new the regulations. There's a thing called the CAM, key audit matters, which needs to be disclosed in your annual report. Then the governance requirements needs to be disclosed. If you go through the annual report, major part of it are regulatory requirements we are complying, right? You see the risk report, you see the especially the governance report, right? All that is regulatory. So you need to tell. So these are the disclosures. So you have to ensure when you are framing your policies and procedures that these disclosure requirements are also duly captured into the compliance policies and procedures. Remember, it may not be your direct responsibility, doesn't mean that you can keep your hands off and then ignore that. No, you cannot, right? It can be the direct responsibility of CFO, it can be the direct responsibility of somebody else. Still, compliance has a hand to it because they need to make sure that the policies and procedures are framed in such a way that these requirements are duly being taken into account. Then the handling customer complaints, again, there's a direction, custom protection direction. So how do you handle your customer complaints, and what resolving mechanism you have, what are the methodologies you have, how best you are doing the recording, and how you take your corrective action, and is this fact being are they being monitored by somebody? All these are compliance requirements under that. Then the record keeping, how do you keep your records? There are certain retention requirements when you are keeping records. If you come to the AML CST also, you say you have two sets of records mainly. You have the static records and you have the dynamic records. So this goes in line with the other banking requirements also to a very great extent, I think almost fully. So the static records, you have to keep it for a period of 6 years. 6 years, right? When you just an example for a static record is, let's say you open an account, so you have your mandate, you have your other various documents that you may have taken. If it's a limited liability, maybe the articles, memorandum, and articles of the association. Then you have the directors list, the form 10, those lists. I don't know that they've been changed now, right? Then the certificate of incorporation. Then if it's a public limited liability, you have to have the document called the certificate of trade, permitting that institution to carry on business. Then only you can open an account for a limited liability company. If it's a listed company, public listed, you need to ensure that these documents are there. So these are the static records. So static records you need to keep, and the retention period record keeping is important. You need to keep it for a period of 6 years, right? Then the 6 years start from the date. Can somebody tell me, static record, when does the 6 year period start? At which point? How do you calculate this 6 years? As far as the static records are concerned, I'm sure there are students who can answer this question. So you have two sets of records. I said static records and the dynamic records. So I mentioned about the static records, given some example as to what the static records are. And the retention period of static records are 6 years. So the question is, the 6 years start commencing from when? Can somebody answer, please?
From the date of closure.
From the date of closure. Very good. It's the retention period starts from the date of closure of the account, right? Not from the date of opening of the account. That's important that you need to keep. So after the closure of the account, after 6 years, you can destroy and destruct this record. Those are the certain record keeping requirements. But if there's an investigation or some inquiry taking place on that particular account, or it is part of that investigation, right? Even if the account is closed, you can't destroy this record. You got to extend the retention period beyond 6 years until those investigations are over and complete. And that the clearance needs to be given by the head of compliance, not by anybody else, right? So those are basically certain retention requirements under record keeping. Then we have another set of documents called the dynamic records. What are the dynamic records? Those dynamic records are nothing but the transaction details, right? The type of account, the type of transaction that are basically the full details of the transaction that has taken place, right? So what is the retention period of that? What is the retention period of the dynamic record? That again 6 years in general, right? There are certain general ledger related ones you have to keep for 10 years as of those days. Other records, customer account related transaction, you have to keep for 6 years. Then the question again arises, the 6 years start from when? Start from when?
From the date of transaction.
Yes. The 6 years start from the date of transaction, right? Not from the date of closure or not from the date account open. So the 6 year period, as far as the dynamic records are concerned, needs to be maintained for a period of 6 years from the date of the transaction. There again, that exception applies. If there's an investigation or some inquiry going on, retention period doesn't apply. It needs to be kept under probably under dual control until the investigations are over. And there again, the clearance needs to be obtained from head of compliance if it's a basically AML related one. Otherwise, maybe from the other relevant authority like head of operations, somebody to do the destruction of those records once the subject inquiries are over. Right. So record keeping is extremely important in that way when you are framing your compliance policies and procedures. So you need to make sure the organization has very well documented set of procedures within in order to meet this record keeping requirement. So it falls within the compliance policies and procedures, right? Now these are tasks that you have to take to, because different banks probably will have different ways of doing it, right? Everything may not come to compliance, but if that is the case, the compliance need to ensure that that whatever the department that is entrusted with that has put this in place, and there's a procedure and the policy and the procedure to do to ensure that these things do happen. Right? The compliance can't get away by saying no, it's not in my organization, it's not coming under me. It may come under you, it may not come under you, but doesn't matter. Remember, you as the compliance officer has the responsibility to look into all this. Otherwise, you cannot create this compliance culture within the organization. Compliance is not only doing of the AML CFT. Compliance is not only, sending the returns or just following up the returns and making sure that it's going. Compliance is not only, getting the regulation or the direction from the regulator and just acting like a postmaster or a postbox and passing it down. Okay, here's the regulation, do comply. No, compliance function is much more wider. The scope is much more wider and large. So you need to ensure that all these things do happen. So you have to find your ways and means of doing it. The way that you frame your policy, the way that you interact with the senior people, the corporate management, never mind. It can happen anyway, but make sure that it happens. That's definitely the role of compliance, which generally most people do not understand and do not put into practice. Right? So just think back, go back to your drawing boards and see, look at it, have another eye, have a hawk eye, right? Have an eagle eye on it to see what's happening in my organization. Are we doing our compliance right? Are we doing our compliance proper? Or is it that there are areas that we are sort of not doing that great? Then we need to expand it. So this is the idea of the whole of this exercise, the learning exercise. You all need to take this back to your workplaces, the working environment, and put these things into practice as applicable or as appropriate most for the organization and its culture and the way the things are happening. Right. Then the drafting compliance reports, extremely important when you are drafting compliance reports, right? So there are certain the requirements that you need to fulfill, and there are certain things that you need to keep it in mind. The compliance report can be broadly classified into the compliance report to the senior management or the executive risk committee, and the compliance report to the board integrated risk committee. Now, there are two different types of compliance report that we are talking, right? So, what is the reason? Now, go back to your basics. Compliance officer reports to whom? Compliance officer reports to directly to the board integrated risk management committee chair. Your reporting line is direct to them, and you are putting your reports, right? And I think I discussed this at our early sessions. Though you have your reporting line to the board, doesn't mean that you have to do everything in the back of the management or back of your head office staff or the senior management. No, that's not what is expected. Whatever you find, it can be a deficiency or it can be a loophole or it can be some breakdown in the controls or it can be some weak areas in the controls and the procedure. It needs to be first discussed within the management. The simple reason is, if it is not done so, corrective action A will not happen. B, even if it happens after the board direct, right, it gets delayed and it's not effective. Therefore, reporting to board is one aspect, but more importantly, it needs to be addressed and fixed. So in order for you to fix it and address it, you have to discuss this in detail with the parties concerned who are in the driving seats of those particular areas where you find the slack in the procedures or some deficiencies in the procedures or some wrongdoings taking place, all that you need to discuss with them. Then only you can make the correction, right? But your reporting line is to the board, that's fine. Doesn't mean that you just go and report everything to the board. You're not a reporter only, right? It's going to be extremely chaotic if you do become only a reporter. It's not going to make much of a good to the organization. Then you will not be able to get the recognition of the staff or your organization. So you have to act like a facilitator or a supporting role you need to play whilst you try to stop wrongdoing, avoid omission, avoid commission of undue thing. You have to play a supporting role and tell them how to do it. In order to do that, yes, you have to have your reports addressed to the internal staff. Basically, the executive risk management committee within the organization, right? And you have various other internal committees if you are a party to it, right? Maybe the ALCO. Sometimes you may be a party. In most banks, the compliance officer is not a party to the ALCO, right? But there are certain banks where they have a separate operational risk management committee. Very important that you have to be there, right? And it can be the strategy committee or it can be the IT steering committee, whatever it is. If you are party to this, you need to make sure that this information reports are submitted to those based on your observations and the finding where you think improvements need to take place, right? If you are within your organization, if you are not a member of other committees that I mentioned, like example, IT steering, then the ALCO, then it can be the strategy committee, or it can even be the executive committee before the board audit committee. Yeah, it can be operational risk committee or whatever it is. So it can be many things. Executive risk committee, right? Different committees are there. So if you are not a member of those, but still you have something to take up towards correction, the best platform is the Executive Risk Management Committee, where you are a definite member. You play a very key role there, right? Through this committee, you need to bring this to the notice of the management and discuss with them, get their feedback, support them, and get those issues sorted at that level. So that is why the compliance reports are broadly classified into two segments: report to the management and report to the board. Content of this more or less could be the same. In practice, what happens is all the papers that go to the board integrated risk management committee are discussed at the executive risk management committee. I know some boards are insisting that there's adequate discussion takes place before the reports are sent to the board. Otherwise, at the board, there can be different views being expressed by the management. So the board, A, doesn't have time. B, they are not interested. They are only interested to make sure that the business runs properly. When I say business, everything is done in a compliant manner, right? So you have to discuss these things at the internally. That is why the report to the internal management or the executive risk management is forms one major aspect of the compliance report. Then the compliance report to the board indicator risk management committee and the BOD, that is the other segment, because the noble rule is no material information, if it has that importance, should be hidden from the board. No, you should not be doing that, because the board or the BIRMC solely and very heavily depend on the compliance officer, whom they think is the conduit between the bank and the board, to come and appraise the board should there be any areas that merits their attention, right? Failing which, the repercussions can be extremely serious and dangerous and devastating. So, as I mentioned, you have to avoid surprises at any given moment. No surprises are entertained. Within the bank, if it is a well-run, very well risk-managed, very articulated compliance culture is established, there shouldn't be surprises. Surprises should be minimized. I would say to be brought to zero. Because if all these things happen, the surprises, the chance of a surprising thing taking place is rather remote. Rather remote. Right? There can be very exceptional. Now, before this pandemic situation erupted, I mean, nobody in the world expected this to this magnitude. So that's a very exceptional situation. But if now in our BCPs, so that was an eye opener. So you take this type of the health calamity also as a area that needs focus when you are drawing your BCP, business continuity planning, right? So other than that, no surprises is entertained, or no surprises should be encouraged. So in other words, surprises need to be minimized. That you can ensure is only by having this constructive dialogue with your internal parties, and as well as sticking to the basics when you are doing your report to the board. So an effective compliance framework could result in generation of a lot of information or intelligence concerning the risk the business faces and how well the compliance function protects the entity against them. Right. Now you found all what I mentioned is summarized in this last bullet. An effective compliance framework would result in generation a lot of information. There will be lots of information going in this report, or intelligence, reports and information concerning the risk, right? All the information that we are submitting to the board or in the compliance report, it revolves around the risk the business faces and how well you are going to avoid the possible consequences by protecting the organization against those risks. Now, that's what I say, compliance is not only a reporter. Board is not interested in having a reporter as the compliance officer. Reporting is just one part. More importantly, while reporting, you need to make sure that the issue is addressed. That's important. The issue is addressed, right? Now, this type of situation, now I'm always in my presentations, I'm just either giving you hints or telling you the type of questions that you might get. When I'm discussing this comes to my mind, you can be tested, the examiner, the student, the examiner can test it by asking the question, right? How you would ensure that while submitting the report, how you would ensure that, the possible consequences of the risk that may arise based on the observation that you have made are avoided? That can be the question. But you can write a thesis on this. You can write a thesis on this, right? So that's the type of questions probably you have to be ready to answer. That's why I say all the points that we discuss here, please do make a note if you think it's important. So it could be material for your question, right? That's why sometimes you say, okay, I wrote 5 pages, but I have come down, I have failed my subject. Can happen, right? You need to give your answer to address the question raised, not writing all what you know in jargon relates to compliance. No. So every point that you bring, you need to connect and say, okay, this is how you do this to avoid surprises, avoid mistakes, right? So that's the type of question probably you will get. Please take that into mind. So then you know what that's the importance of this discussions and the lectures, where we discuss so many things relating to our day-to-day environment, and then try to understand how best we are going to take these concepts back into our drawing boards, back into our workstations, back into our working environment, and how you put this into practice. So that's the importance of this type of program, right? Then the drafting compliance report we are continuing. Such information results in publication or routine reports to ERMC, BRMC, right? So you carry out your compliance checks, the compliance audits, then you extract information from various risk reports, then you extract information from various audit reports maybe, right? And through your own compliance activities, and through the activities that you have captured into your compliance program, and you will have various information, right? So using that information, you will make those reports to the ARFC. So in the event any system failure, human errors, breaches, and occurrences of emergency, such information would also result in generation of reports to the ERMC and the ARFC, right? So we discussed this in detail. The objective of compliance reports are to communicate certain sensitive contents to the individuals who may be unfamiliar with the compliance and the compliance terminology. Right. Now we understood what are the reports and with whom that we would share our report internally, as well as within the management, as well as to the board. And here one important point comes up in the third bullet. The objective of compliance report are to communicate such sensitive content matters. The matters that we are going to, as compliance, going to convey could be very sensitive to individuals who may not be that familiar with the compliance and the compliance terminology. So this is very common. Sometimes you might go and tell about some AML CFT requirement. Probably some of your senior managers may not be, that knowledgeable about it, which again boomerangs and comes and hit you, because it's your duty to educate them. The moment you see that, you need to take action and make sure that the knowledge level, the skill levels of those senior, not only the juniors and the peers, you have to bring this to the notice of the seniors also, because it's unless they understand the aim message. I'm just taking an example, right? So there's a problem, because they are the people who are in the driving seats in running and driving the business forward. So they need to be given that. So basically, and there can be, now even you take the board of directors, there are experts from different fields, right? When you talk about the governance, you will understand, when you appoint the board, different committees, subcommittees and all that, right? So you invite certain independent directors to come and serve in our board in order to get the expertise in the area where they are specialized, right? So that person will be an expert on it. but he may not understand or not know much or may not be that familiar with the compliance requirement. Now, for instance, say you hire a chartered engineer or appoint him to the board, probably to get advice on the technical aspect, right? In maybe the certain projects that you are going to finance, large projects, right? So if there's a person who understands the onions there, can always sitting in the board can guide us, right? If you have huge buildings, you might, okay, with, if you are, say, putting up a huge building for your head office, so it's may good to have a, expert in civil engineering sitting in your board. I mean, I'm just saying an example, right? So in various boards you have, experts in the engineering field, experts in the accounting field, experts in the finance field, experts in the field of law, experts in the field of management, right? Experts in the field of bankers all over, like, So you have different people. Then the reports that you submit are going to be read by all these people. So, and it's going to carry sensitive information. So some people may just take it and might not even give the required attention on it, because probably they may not understand it. On the other side, certain people may get thoroughly excited by listening to this information. Therefore, so let's see how we need to draft the report. So the fact that these reports are going to be read by certain people who are decision makers, including the regulator, they're also going to see this. Because when they come on the regulatory inspection, supervisory inspection, they are going to take these reports and see. They are going to take the compliance report. They are going to take the risk reports. They are going to take the audit report and go through that. Right? These are kind of a situation where you have to do a very, very delicate balancing act. Extremely important for you to understand this. Right? From one side, some people will unnecessarily get, excited and, go havoc, play havoc there. Sometimes they might not understand it, or due to lack of understanding might, react differently. At the same time, most of this information are sensitive and it can come and boomerang. On the other hand, you have a regulatory, obligation to report it. You can't hide facts. So therefore, when you are writing your reports, a good compliance officer will make sure that it's very concise, very clear. Need to be very clearly put, placed, presented, concise, clear, and do not use subjective, emotive, or impassioned language. That the attempt to be as factual and objective as possible. Right? When you are writing a report, you need to make sure that you don't make it emotive or impassioned. The language you use is important. That's why when we are discussing about the skills of the compliance officer, we clearly understood that compliance officer has to have excellent communication skills, both written and oral. Very important. You should be able to, present yourself orally as well as in writing. Right? So when you are writing your report, you should not be using emotive, impassioned words and the language. Right? Because if you use that, it can compromise the quality of the factual and the objective nature of the report. Right? Okay. Now, if you go through your audit report, especially, some time back, if you go through the report written by some of the auditors, with all due respect, that now things have changed. Things have changed a lot now, I must say. Right? The same report that you get in respect of every branch. Start with we observe with very serious concern. The standard language, right, is the same thing that you get for branch A, B, C, D, and E. I don't say that it cannot be the same thing. It can be the same thing. But, when you see that, if it's actually a very serious concern, it's fine. Right? If a mandate is, the documents are not attached together also, you say, okay, you observe with a serious concern that it has not been properly stapled. That's a risk, I understand. The documents can go all over. That's fine. But still, right? When you use that, the person who probably doesn't understand the internal procedure, the mechanism, the problems, the storage issues, the time constraints, the resource constraints, might get excited. Right? So you should not be using emotive language. Doesn't mean that you should never use this type of word. If it is very serious, you have to say extremely serious concern. If it's the case, yes. Right? But do your reporting properly so that, the core is not compromised. Ensure that the report is clearly structured. Okay, do not use emotive language, and the content has to be perfectly accurate. You can't give wrong information. Very, very dangerous thing. Right? The information given needs to be perfect, needs to be 100% accurate. Very important. If you submit inaccurate information, that will lead towards sometimes the policy level decisions may be taken, which can be harmful to the organization. Right? So this applies to any report, not only compliance report. The risk reports, audit report, everything, this principle applies. Right? Information has to be perfect and accurate. Ensure that the report is clearly structured, preferably by setting out executive summary, scope of monitoring, findings, potential consequences, remedial action, enriched with the timeline. Now, these are key areas that need to cover or encompass or captured into a report. Right? Depending on it. Suppose you are giving a 10-page report. Right? It has to be very concise and clear. But if the situation arises, now you take this much talked about the past coup investigation report. We're running into 1,000 odd pages, thousands and some large number of pages, right? So somebody has to go through it, fine. But that type of report needs to be given executive summary, probably in a readable way, where the crux of the report is understood and presented. Likewise, in your report also, ideally, if you can give an executive summary where you will highlight the key facts which you are going to share with the recipient or the report reader for him to understand what you are going to say in detail in the entire report. So the executive summary, and it has to be very well structured. That's why they're written, the competence in written expertise comes into play. Right? There has to be very, proper rationale sequence of, recording the events. Okay? Recording the event. So that proper sequence has to be there. It has to be very well structured. Executive summary. And then you need to say the scope of monitoring. right? When you are writing your report, you have to definitely say the scope. What is the scope you have taken, right? Or if you are asked to look into something and submit a report, you have to definitely mention the scope of your report. What is the area that we have taken into consideration in submitting this report, right? If it's now say you are asked to do a report pertains to the account open, right? So you need to say the scope, right? Or the sample size. Sample size, you call the population, right? So if you have taken, say, 5 branches to do this exercise, you need to say the population is this, the scope is this. In order to carry out this exercise, we have considered the 5 branches naming A, B, C, D, and E, right? And if you are doing it by visiting the branch, or if you are doing it by going through the other reports available at head office, then you need to say the scope of this report. It is based on the reports that the head office has received pertaining to this area from audit or risk or whatever it is. That has to be mentioned in your report. Otherwise, when you submit the report by going through only the reports here, available report, one might think that you have carried out a on-site visit and done on-site visit also, whether you have gone through the entire thing at the full thick in Berserk, or you have taken certain samples. Then you have to say that also. This report is based on the sample check method, right? So there are various technical points that say if it's a huge area, you can't take a sample of 5 or 10 and then come to conclusion. Right? There are certain mathematical, the approaches in determining this report writing and selecting samples and selecting population, right? So those are highly advanced part. What I want to tell here at this moment is when you are submitting a report, you need to very clearly say the scope, very clearly say, how you monitored this. What is the methodology used in doing it? By visiting or by going by the statements you are available in head office or like that. Then you need to give your finding. What are the findings? What are your observations in this exercise? Then you need to say through these findings and what you predict, what would be the consequences, right? That's what I say. No point in just going and reporting, right? The account opening is poor and they have not taken the KYC. That's a reporting, just to say. But in your report, you must give the consequences, the potential consequence of not taking this. As a result, today the bank can be fined, the corporate fines, the repercussions can be serious. So that also has to be mentioned. Then more importantly, you need to give your remedial action or your recommendations to put that situation right. That has to go into the report. Because the reader is important, more kind of eager to know how we are going to solve this problem. Knowing the problem is one aspect. How we are going to solve the problem is more important than how we are going to fix it, how we are going to address it. Then you need to give your corrective action or recommendation towards corrective action. Right? If that doesn't work, or if your report is not giving all this information, then of course the purpose of the report is very much compromised. Right? So going ahead, compliance officer should also be alert to potential sensitivity. Now we understood the reports are going to, especially the compliance reports are going to carry very sensitive information. then the compliance need to be aware of the possible consequences due to the sensitive facts being disclosed. It is therefore suggested to discuss or agree on the content of the report with the management prior to submitting them to the BRMP BOD. This can be done through ERM, right? Now, don't take it wrong, right? Doesn't mean that you have to hide things. No, right? When you see a problem, say a very serious issue, immediately you have to bring it to the notice of the parties concerned, unless it's a fraud. Fraud, you don't go and discuss with the fraudster. You have carried out a fraud, how can you put it right? You don't ask that question. So fraud is that type of thing, it's an exceptional thing. Otherwise, as long as it's not fraud, then you need to immediately discuss with the party concerned and tell them there's a wrongdoing happening here. There's a wrong practices put in place. There are various deficiencies in your procedures. There are various deficiencies in implementing the procedure, right? So you have to discuss that with the party. Even before writing the report, if the matter is so trivial, right? So you can do that. Right? So it takes my mind back. So happened to visit a branch to see. I mean, after hours, they are taking, the bulk deposits, and there are lots of people coming into the branch, and they keep the cash at that moment, entire cash on the desk being counted, but there are a whole heap of outsiders who walk into the branch by entertaining large deposits from customers. So there are certain customers who always bring large amount of cash, bulk money, right? Sometimes after hours they bring, or before opening they bring, especially after hours, when the entire cash of the bank kept on the desk and being counted, reserves being counted. Sometimes these people are here. And there they had been at that particular instant, I remember, they had not known who had come even. No records. Different people come different days. Right? No idea of as to who the party who came bringing the cash with them. There are so many others also come. Right? Because it has become a routine thing. So people have not understood, the branch also have not understood. Right? So when these things are seen, immediate action needs to be taken. You don't wait for the report to go. Right? So anything can happen even at that moment. It can happen even tomorrow. Right? So you have to immediately take up the matter with the manager and then probably escalate next. And still, you have to stop this. Taking cash is fine, but at least know who is coming. You don't have to bring army of men to bring that cash in. No. They can remain in the vehicle or whatever it is. One person in charge of cash can come. They are not going to come and count cash inside. They have counted and brought it. After that, bringing one person inside is more than enough, a known person. Right? Why should you allow 5, 6, 7 people inside with the cash? And they didn't know who these people was. I mean, I'm just relating it to certain, practical scenarios. Right? We are talking about drafting of reports. Right? So the drafting of reports, the point we were trying to stress here is corrective action needs to be taken and your recommendations need to go. Right? So a corrective action, when you are giving the corrective action, if the issue is so sensitive, you don't wait till the report is sent. You have to take immediate corrective action. The other side of the story is when you give this sensitive information in the report, right? These are going to be read by everybody, the outside parties. The internal auditors will definitely read that internal party. External auditors will also read. The regulator will read it. Right? then it can be very serious repercussion. But at the same time, just because the repercussions are there doesn't mean that you have to hide facts. No, you can't do that because regulatory you are bound, obliged to do the reporting proper. That's why you say don't use emotive language, right? And in the report itself, you say, okay, this is there, the risk is high or ultra high or high risk. Still, remedial action has also been taken into account. Therefore, if the remedial action, the proposed action is put into place, the high risk scenario will immediately come down to medium or low or whatever. In terms of the risk report, yes, you will talk about it. In compliance report, you might not say about this level of to the degree, but still you have to do it the right way, understanding the consequences of your action. Right? You might do it with good intention, but probably with less understanding about the consequences. So therefore, you have to be extremely careful because you are always playing a dual role. You are a part of the management and you are part of the regulation. You are the supporting, facilitating party within the management to the regulator. You are the facilitator of conveying what's happening in the ground levels to the board. Right? So you always play a dual role. And then you have to always keep that in mind that you know no harm to both sides. No compromise to the quality and the thing. Then no compromise in reporting the facts. It's a very, very delicately needs to be played. That's why you need the expertise in your skills, both oral and written. Right? So need to remember that the compliance report may have serious implications for others within the organization and also for the organization itself, as it may later be read by the regulator. Right? The regulator will read it. You can't stop. They come and ask, you have to give. Right? Always have that in mind. They might, get thoroughly excited. That can be, material for their report. These things happen. It's very difficult to avoid, but still, you have to. That's why it said that you need to be very conscious, very concise, very clear, without using emotive or emotional language. You need to present facts. Anybody has any doubt in this area can raise, because it's a balancing act. Right? Therefore, the language of report should not be inflammatory. You should not be putting it, exaggerate and putting it. But objective. But it has to be very objective and balanced and fair. It has to be a balanced one, a fair one, firmly and clearly providing facts. Facts need to be given. There's a saying, facts are stubborn, but still you need to disclose the fact. If you follow the noble principles of making a report where you would enrich the report with your recommendations, how to avoid the subject risk that the organization is going to face or is faced with, then the seriousness of that issue is very much negated because you have identified the way to do it proper. Then after, it's a matter of seeing whether the recommendations have been carried out. Right? So, if not given due consideration, such report may lead to difficult situation at times. At times, it might lead to very serious, difficult situation where you are going to, as an organization, going to be extremely embarrassed. So the diplomacy and resilience are two of the many characteristics that a CEO will need to develop throughout his career. So therefore, CEO, compliance officer, needs to be very, very diplomatic, very professional. And therefore, the diplomacy and the resilience are very important characteristics the compliance officer should possess. In order to safeguard the organization from the possible risk and ensuring the business is carried out in a desired and a correct manner and a compliant manner. B, when that happens, that will help you to develop your career because the management and the staff will recognize you as a facilitator, as an assistant, as a supporter, right? Otherwise, you will just be a reporter who would probably be discarded from both sides at a particular point. But the board is not interested in reading, the reports with very sensitive and bad information all the time. Even if they are there, you need to tell the board, look here, this was the issue, but then we are addressing, or we have addressed. To do that, you need to have those relationships, you need to have the dialogue, you need to have that understanding. More than that, or equally, you need to be my example that I always take, consultant physician. You need to know the business. You need to know that. You need to know your onions in that particular given area. Right? When you are talking about, the treasury, very sensitive area. Extremely sensitive area. Right? So especially when you are writing your risk report, you need to understand the ground realities also. Ground realities. The various levels of delegation given. Right? The practical problems that they would come across in implementing those delegations and how best they have covered it up by finding workarounds. I'm just giving you little examples. Right? Technically speaking, there are certain limits granted. Even you don't have to go to treasury, you take your credit. Limits given. Some banks have individuals casted with limits, some banks have the committee system. The committee has the authority. Right? So especially in this kind of an environment where the committee cannot physically come and sit, how do you do that? So you have to have an understanding about how things are happening in the ground level. Right? The requirement might say the committee has to approve. Say the credit committee has to approve. Right? So the credit committee has to approve means all have to sign. Or they are, as per your policy, maybe if the credit committee has 3 members or 5 members, at least 3 members need to sign. Right? So there can be a situation, maybe out of the 5 members, 3 members are outside. They're going abroad. Got stuck in the different country due to pandemic. And they are unable to come back. But the policy says, I'm just taking little example for you to understand. The policy says, it needs to be approved by 3 members of the board credit committee. It's an example. And you carry out your compliance check and you find that, it's a very large credit given, which comes under the DA limit of the board credit committee, but only 1 member has signed. Right? So it's a violation. So one can write an essay or thesis on it. You observe with serious concern that this credit has been granted with violating the bank's credit policy. by getting the sanction of one director. Since it looks a very serious issue. But if you really go into it, sometimes maybe that the proposal was online shared. If somebody has a loss system, of course, it can happen. If the loss system didn't work due to some issue, or the party couldn't access it, the credit has to be immediately given, then probably conveyed over the phone, explained and given the verbal okay to go ahead. So those are material information that you can bring into it, okay, despite the fact that it carries only one signature. Observe that the verbal approval or the consent has been obtained, which has been supported with a subsequent email or something. Right? Now see the difference. Same thing, the proper procedure has taken place, subject to various limitations and the practical difficulties we have to face up. But it can be put in two different ways. So this proper thing has happened, but only thing they were physically not available to sign it. And they have gone through and given the verbal okay. Right? Ideally, at least it has to be followed up with a mail or something. It may be there, it may not be there. So, but at the same time, all this happens, but you can still write to say it is a total violation of the credit policy because it didn't carry the signatures of the other two directors. But in reality, it is not the case. Physical signature is not there, but then they did their best and they knew this was going to give and they consented to give it. Likewise, I just took an example. So you need to get to the ground levels and make sure that you are reporting. You can still say, okay, we observe, and as per the policy, 3 directors need to sign, but it was signed only by 1 director. However, we have the following observations as well. The other 2 directors who were supposed to sign this were abroad, got caught with the pandemic, unable to come back, but at the same time, they have been consulted or sent the fact sheet or sent through the loss system, the loan originating, and they have okayed it. So, 2 different scenarios. But if that was actually done with a wrongful mindset to take the advantage of the situation where no reference has been made to the other directors because they are away, one fellow has just taken it and taken a call and gone ahead. Then it has to be reported. You know? So then it's a material fact that they have been deliberate violation of the policy. Taken advantage of the situation to go ahead with 1, whereas the policy requires 3. So these are the things that you need to keep it in mind when you are writing the report. So if not given due consideration, such reports may lead to difficult situation at times. Diplomacy and resilience are just 2 of the main characteristics that a CEO should need to develop throughout his career. Right. Then successfully managing the regulatory supervisory visit is a critical part of the CEO's role. Very important. Now, the supervisory visits are conducted by the regulator, normally on an annual basis. So, managing this visit, managing the regulator during the supervisory examination is one of the key tasks of the compliance. It starts like this. Before they come, they don't just, jump into unless it's a spot audit or something, surprise check or audit, which they are bound to do. But the regular audits, they always tell and come. They send a letter 2 to 3 weeks before the date which they intend in commencing it. Write that letter to CEO, saying that our team will be visiting your bank on such and such a date. And have this information and the document ready. Right? So invariably, it's your responsibility when that happens. If the regulatory inspection is on, CO will call you and give you the letter. Then it's in your hand. If you manage it properly, it will be smooth. If you mismanage it, that's going to be funeral, I can tell you. You'll have extremely difficult, bad experiences if you mismanage and mishandle it. Right? The moment you see it, right, you need to apply yourself, right? We'll go through the slide first. Successfully manage and regulate supervisory visit is a critical part of the CEO's role. Importance of regulatory visits examination, importance of providing information and document required. Right. So first you must understand that the regulatory visit, that is something that you need to welcome. It is something that you need to always welcome, because if you look at it on the face of it, it may be, some kind of a nonsense. One might think, okay, it's undue pressure, unwanted. No, it's most wanted. Regular inspections are essential from the regulator's point of view and also from your point of view. Because if they come and identify things that probably have not come under your microscope or your radar, so it's good to identify them and put them also right before you face calamity. Right? Otherwise, you will learn a hard lesson by not having those things in place, which has been missed by you. So always treat it as a kind of a opportunity, a blessing or a privilege to have a regular inspection. Right? All these things go hand in hand. So you do your job and these things are welcome. So you are talking about the regulatory visit. So you need to take the regulatory visit very positively. So what you should do is, the letter that is sent by the regulator to CEO, probably with a copy to the compliance officer, will convey their intimation of desire to carry out that the supervisory regulatory examination on a particular date. They will, definitely give you minimum 2 weeks or 3 weeks time. So you take that letter, and that letter will tell what and what document that they want to be shared with them on day one. We call that letter the first day cover or first day letter in normal compliance language, right? Then it's your duty to make sure that when the regulator visits you on that given date, all information that they had wanted are submitted to them without any exception. That's the key thing, right? They will ask whole heap of information and documents to be submitted. Now you have to start running your the role now. I'm talking in terms of this regulatory visit. And you have to get activated the moment you get this letter into your hand, right? So the information that they're asking covering the full gamut of the banking operation. So you may have to get information from finance, you have to get information on network, may have to get certain information from your warehouse, right? You may get certain information from various business heads, then probably the risk officer, probably the audit officer, then probably the strategy officer. Like, you will have different type of information related and connected to different types of the KMPs and then the internal staff. So you need to liaise with them and make sure that all information that the regulator had wanted are ready for them to have access on day one. That's your duty, prime duty. If you do this, you have just won them 50%, I can tell you. That I can tell you through my experience. So automatically, right, get them 50% by doing that. If you don't do that, you're gone. They will start the inspection with a very negative mindset. Then it's going to be a struggle throughout. It's fair, no? They're giving you time and they have, to cover so many banks. They're also on a very tight schedule. So we have to support them and facilitate them. We are talking the report writing. So part of that is preparing and managing the regulatory supervisory visit. So we finish the report writing, coming to this. So you need to ensure that all information you have collected, put that into the various formats. Probably they will want it in different formats based on there. So you need to get through your internal parties, stakeholders intact, and give it the way that they want it. Right? Then, once they come, day one, give them the other facilities that they want. Probably they will have access to your system. So you can arrange it. You have to, not you can, you have to arrange it. Don't allow it to IT, provide access and just go and sleep. No, it's not going to work. IT doesn't understand the importance of this. IT head may understand, but he will delegate it to somebody. These auditors have come, can you give access? And that guy gets a call or something, he forgets it. These things are, which can easily be avoided, and if not avoided, the repercussions are serious. That much I can tell you. Right? Go into details and be a very detailed approach to it, have a detailed approach to it, and give them all what they want. I mean, shouldn't be anything left to say it's not there, including proper accommodation. Treat them nicely. Give them the necessary area within your bank, where they can do things, handle things in a very comfortable and confidential way. Give them the necessary IT support, access, a telephone, the contact numbers, right? All information with these accesses. When you are giving access, yes, you have to give the read-only access, right? Otherwise, that can be material for their report, right? They will write that also. You are given access, but then read and write both. Means they can do anything with our data. No, they shouldn't be able to do anything with data. They should only be able to read data. So the proper controls has to be maintained and is given to them. Other document that you submit, list them out, and they will ask the policies. So you have to list out all the policies, right? This is what we discussed right from the beginning. So you need to know, because I know there are some at times, then only you start identifying what policies are there in the bank. That's ridiculous, right? They give us the list of policies. So get those information. So having this information, well in time with you will save your time as well as everybody's time, right? I told you regarding the policies at the inception, we said the bank business is run in accordance with the policies, and then you need to know whether there are procedures to meet the requirement of the policy. For you to know, definitely you need to have the list of policies in the bank. So then you don't have to, break your head in identifying and writing to people, tell me what are the policies coming under your department. No. This is some homework that you should have done. So generally, when they come, they ask for the list of policies and all the policies to be given. Right? So by that time, if you have done your homework, you will know exactly how many policies are there in the bank, relates to each department, how many policies, totaling up to this. Then you have the list of policies, call for the policies. And ideally, you should have a copy of the policy with you, at least a soft copy form. Because you're supposed to go through the policies and make sure that the policy covers all regulatory requirements. adequately covered. For you to do that, you need to have that, right? If you don't have, then you can call for it and list out all the policies. And if you can give it in a tabulated format, okay, this is the policy and this is the policy owner. And for any details, this is the party you can contact and this is the contact number. Very easy for them. Very easy for them. And easy for you also, right? Then you submit all the policies with the list and giving, cover page saying, okay, these are the policies and these are the policy owners and these are the contact parties whom you can contact and get details about it. And by that time, you should also know what are the policies and, to what extent are they been and whether the renewal has taken place.
Excuse me, sir. Sorry to disturb you, sir.
Hello, some disturbance.
Hello, sir. Yeah, the presentation gone again, sir.
Oh my God, what is that?
Now it came back.
Maybe some, signal issue. It looks like there's nothing done on this. So when I heard my voice being repeated, right? So that's as far as the policies are concerned. The same principle applies to the other information also. Hand them over, and there's an examining chief coming in charge of the team. You liaise with him or her and hand over it and get a sign off for handing over all the documents, right? Then you need to prepare a set of documents, a checklist, and hand over. Here's your thing, here's everything. Hand over and get a sign off, correct way, that you have handed over all these documents to them, either in hard copy form or soft copy form. Right? So do it very professionally. Then the day one, they will start with a very positive note. Because A, you have given them all the information that they wanted, nothing short. Nothing short. That tells a story. Okay, this bank is very systematic. They do things very systematic way, very professional, everything given on the dot. Right? Likewise, okay, when you do that professionally, you can expect the same professionalism from them also. So make them a very, in a polite manner, get an acknowledgement for what you're handing over. Fine. Right? And for the access that they want, also get a letter from them. Right? Okay, these and these people are given. There are certain sensitive information. Then you don't open it to everybody, even in the team. Access to the board papers. Right? Even the board papers are not accessible by the staff. Majority of the staff. But they would want that. So depending on, I'm just giving you a little example in how you prepare and manage the regulatory supervisory visit within the compliance department. So this applies to the compliance staff, right? So probably you will give it maybe to the examining chief or another one or two designated persons within the team. Because very confidential information there, right? So then get from whom you think that this access be given. So likewise, depending on its nature, you need to do it in a very systematic and professional way. So you know they are there, you have made them comfortable, arrange little tea and a little snack, there's nothing wrong. All are human. We need to maintain our relationship. That's how you keep your cordial relationship with the regulator. Doesn't mean that you have to go below your dignity. No. But do it very professionally. Right? It's decent for any visitor. You can provide the tea, cup of tea with a little snack or something. Right? And give them a enclosed area where they can lock up their documents and go. Right? Either they can take the key or you can keep the key or whatever it is. So you come to terms with them. Right? Then they are put on a very comfortable footing and starting with a very positive note. Right? Then what happens? The examination starts. Then they start different sections are allocated to different people in the team. Probably you will know who handles what. You are the coordinator. You are supporting it, right? And they probably want the senior people to have discussions with them one-to-one. So arrange those discussions. Or you can get your secretary or the compliance, some staff officer you can assign for it. But you need to, to play the game from the front. You need to make sure that everything happens the way that you want. And ideally, you can dedicate one staff from your department to deal with them. Because if you are busy sometimes, but you need to make sure. Right? I used to remember every morning, okay, I just talk to them, give a call to the examining chief, ask, okay, are everything okay, fine, anything missing, what are the issues? End of the day, also you agree with them and you're going, just tell us what your problems are and support them. So that kind of interactiveness will make this exercise a very pleasant one, right? And arrange your internal staff to have a dialogue with them, because they definitely want, now they are doing the strategy, they would want to talk to the strategy officer. If they are checking the risk part, they would want to talk to the CRO. If they are going through something with the audit programs and things like that, we'll definitely want to talk to the CIO, Chief Internal Auditor. IT part, CIO, Chief Information Officer. So you have to arrange and agree with the time slot. So better to know from them when do you want this person to come, right? And tell them, explain, okay, I know that you want them, and just tell us the time so we can arrange it to avoid, problems for both sides. Now, your staff as well as for them. So if you plan it out and do, you will make sure that both parties are well connected without the least possible delays and inconveniences on both sides. Arrange the discussion. So if necessary, you may also go and take part if the discussion is so important and trivial. Merit your attention. Right? So once the discussions are happening, daily you will follow it up. You will want to know what are the problems, what are the shortcomings, what are the issues they have, right? And solve them on, support and facilitate. And once the examination is over, they will tell, okay, we are going to finish it by this. Then you know they are going to finish it by that. Make sure, I think it's very good if you can get every business process owner or the business head whose area has been come under scrutiny by the examiners to have a chat with them before they conclude the examination. This is very important to avoid surprises. Extremely important to avoid surprises. Right? So each business person, if you say that take the treasury, you will get the head of treasury to have a discussion in addition to their routine one, have the final discussion with them. So the head of treasury will know what are the issues that the regulator has identified in my given area. So no surprises. If you don't do this properly, what happens is they come, go and write the report, and sometimes they have a concern, probably due to lack of communication. They say this policy is not there or this document is not there, right? Then it can be a very serious issue on the examination report. But then when the report comes, they say, why it was there or no? Right? The treasury will say, why it was there or no? So this type of situations will definitely occur, I can tell you. So to avoid that, you get this discussion in. Then they have to finally tell, okay, what are the key issues? And then if they say, okay, these are the key issues because you didn't have this document, then he can, if it's available, they can give it. If it's not available, then it's established and we don't have to debate. Because when the report comes, because since you are in the middle, your internal people say, make a tibuna, this type of things do come up. You can avoid all this. If that was there, then in the final discussion, they should know. Then even your internal party cannot say, no, it was there, they never asked for it, so we haven't given. Okay, we have given, but still they have written. No, it can't happen now because the final discussion itself, so they know the key issues coming under that, like that you have. Then there's another thing called the exit meeting. What I suggested is a one-off meetings with every business, the process owner, the vertical head. If you are a good, efficient compliance officer, you would do that, and you will make sure that everything runs smoothly. That's what I can tell you. Then the exit meeting is where the entire examination team meets with all the key KMPs of the bank, touching on their various identifications or the issues that they have identified. Right? Then in this meeting, the normal understanding is that all key issues will be put on table and discussed. So no surprises. Even the report comes, technically there can't be anything addition coming up. Then you will record all this and probably write to the internal party. Say if it's treasury, okay, there you take the minutes, treasury, 5 key issues, right? And then you can write to them and say, okay, in the examination, even all this happened even before the draft report is announced, issued. 5 key issues, right? Just a brief one. Say, okay, put this right, or give your way forward and how to do the remedial action with due timelines captured in. So you have everything on record. Likewise, you do it for every business vertical or the process, right? The exit interview will be the last, where they will spell out all this. Then by that time, there's nothing surprise coming out except for maybe 1 or 2 extra additional things. In general, everything is conveyed. So in the exit meeting is another opportunity where you can counter with the examiner and sort out things before they issue even the draft report. Right? So all the success of this entire exercise lies in the hands of the compliance, because you are the party bringing both these sides together, and you are the party who ensures the due conduct of the examination and facilitating it from your side. So the exit interview done, then everybody knows, then they go out, then make sure that you take over the document that you have handed over and give them back to the respective departments with due acknowledgements. Right? So then misplacements or document going haywire, all that can be avoided if you follow this. Right? These are not said in textbook. I'm just giving you how to do it with my experience. Right? Then you get everything acknowledged, okay, taken back, handed over to the department. So the question of any document going missing is totally avoided. It can't happen. Everything on record. Right? So your officers can't say it was given to the auditors and they have not given it back. Right? It was given to them, they say, oh, given to compliance. Compliance will say, no, all these stories can be avoided. Do it properly. So, okay, they go back and relationship is maintained, very cordial, but in a professional way, right? No obligation on either side. Then they send you the draft report, right? And sometimes they have one meeting chaired by the director bank supervision and calling the key people where they think, okay, key issues are there, if the very serious key issues are there, even without waiting for the report, they just summon you and give a briefing, right? And the exit meeting, okay, I told you all the KMPs will sit, they will be there, and the very sensitive one relate to the board, the succession plan, or that type of very confidential information. The central bank will, okay, thank everybody who came, and all will go. So once we do that, before the exit meeting within the bank, they will want the CEO, the compliance officer will also remain there, and probably maybe the board secretary will remain there, where they would discuss very sensitive issues, right? On the governance problems, will also be discussed. So you will get to know that. So they go, and after that, if there are very serious ones, they might immediately have a meeting and call the CEO and the compliance officer and various other key people and have an immediate meeting and convey their concern. Otherwise, the report will come after a month or so, the draft report. Then you have to give your comments on those, right? That's another thing that you need to organize. The report is confidential. Generally, you don't share the report in full with every stakeholder. So you need to take the report. It's generally sectionalized, but they sectionalize in a different format or different way. But ideally, you need to select things which comes under different baskets of the relevant process zone or the vertical head. And then you will share that part with them and get their comments on it, right? Now, once these comments are taken, you have to go through each and every comment. Different people have different writing skills. Different people have different way of presenting it. Now, there's a whole heap of work here, remember. The examination itself, we are talking all this. Once the comment is given by, and make sure you meet the deadline. Those are the golden noble rules. I mean, everybody has to stick to it, right? The regulator will send it and giving you time, maybe 2 weeks or 3 weeks to come back with our comment, draft report. So you can't be just going and asking for extension and neither just sleep on it and go and say, give us another week or two. I mean, they will not like it. Stick to the deadline. If the deadline cannot be met, immediately tell. Due to this reason, we may not be able to give it in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. Very valid reason if you are there. Tell it beforehand and try to get extension. Sometimes they agree, sometimes they don't agree. If they don't agree, you have to anyway somehow meet it. Right? Meeting deadlines is a one noble rule. No way that you can avoid deadline. That's number one. Then getting those comments from them. So if they are given 3 weeks, definitely you need to get it within at least in 10 days, minimum. Ideally within a week, right? Because you have lots of processes to be done thereafter. If the deadline is 3 weeks, don't give them timeline until the 16th or the 17th day to submit the responses. It won't work. It will not come, number one. Number two, if it come, you have to do lots of rationalizing, lots of discussion, bring uniformity into the replies, right? And give the replies in a very formal and a responsible and a professional manner. All that needs time and takes time. So give them, you have to plan it out depending on it. They are given 3 weeks, first you give them 1 week's time to come back. And then get the responses, study them, and probably have a discussion one-to-one. Then you understand what they are trying to tell. Then probably you will put it in the language in a uniform way, covering all the responses in the given same language. When I say language, all English, that's true, but different styles of writing, right? Sometimes something given, they will write an essay as a comment and say disagree, right? You have to say, that's important. If you are agreeing with the comment, you point blank say agreed, and this is what you plan to do, and this is the timeline. and ideally they also give a timeline to complete. First, the timeline to send the draft comments on the draft, then the timeline to complete the rectification, right? So you go through the comments given by your process owners internally, and then rationalize and standardize them and redo it, get their confirmation that what you have redone based on their original submission is in order. Otherwise, problems will come up. They will say something, you will rationalize and put it in a different way, and they might say, no, this is not what we said, you have gone and changed our comment. That's very dangerous, and one of the last things that you have to avoid. Extremely embarrassing if that happens, right? At the same time, extremely embarrassed to send the comments as it is, the way that have been said. No, that is also not possible, not to be done. So you have to do this rationalizing. So you need to draft it in the best language, be very, concise, clear, and make sure that the facts are accurate, and given the comment and put it back to them and say, okay, we have rather improved your comment. Please confirm that this comment is in order and you are in line and agreeing with it. Get that consent in writing. I mean, that's extremely important. Otherwise, these problems will arise. I can vouch and tell you. At least they will say, no, this is not what he said. You are going to written something else. No. Get that confirmation from them. Then you know for sure all what they sent is captured in the best possible language that you know, and their uniformity maintained across the entire comment that you are giving, right? The very well structured and given. Either you agree or disagree, right? If you disagree, if it's really to disagree, I mean, you have to say it's disagreed, but you have to give your comments, say why you are disagreeing. Because these disagreements can be avoided. There are so many ways, the methodology that we discuss and to put into practice will minimize this disagreement. Because you are having a discussion, you go back to the examination itself, we are going to arrange that discussion with the process owner. After that, it will be taken up at the exit meeting also. Right? But occasionally certain things that are not discussed also comes in the report. I mean, these things also happen, but many a times we can minimize those incidents by following this suggested path. Right? Then the answers are given. Either you agree, if agreeing, say what you are trying to avoid it. Disagreeing, you have to very clearly spell out and say why you are disagreeing. Right? Especially when you are disagreeing, you have to be extremely careful. You need to be very sure of the fact you are giving. Right? Okay? Then you send your responses to them. Then generally, based on it, they issue the final report. Once the final report is issued, remember, even the issuer can't change the comment. That's not possible as per our internal regulatory system. Once the regulator issues the final report, that comment cannot be changed even by they themselves. With a copy of that, it can be changed only with the monetary board consent. Right? So whatever possible needs to be done to make sure that if there's a wrong comment or due to some misunderstanding, misrepresentation of fact, there can be certain things coming on the report. So you have to deal on it, and it has to be fully dealt before the final report is issued. When the final report is issued, it is like, no changes are possible. Report stands. Okay. So now you would remember all what we discussed, and then before the final report, the draft report comes, you give your answers. Based on it, either they agree, disagree, and then the regulator will go through. There are times I have seen with our comment, they have taken certain comments totally off the report. Because going through the process, we had initial discussion, we had the exit, prior to exit discussion, then we had the exit discussion, then we have the draft comments. If all this is done and then there's a, well-established approach that we have taken and we are saying the same thing, obviously, if they are still making a wrong comment, it's very rather remote that they would insist on. And either they will take it off or they are saying a different story, we are telling a different story, whatever it is. So this is how you should prepare yourself for the report, the regulatory supervisory visit. Right. So I think it's time for us to take a break. And after the break, probably either we will start up with the grouping thing, right? And there in that discussion, sometimes I may request you to open your camera so that at least I see the audience, depending on the time. So just be ready if I ask you to open your camera when you are discussing about the assignment and giving the topics for each group, right? So we'll meet up after a break. Now it's about 10 to 11. So we'll meet up around say 11:20, 11:25. Now what I would do is, now I find this batch is one of the largest batches we have had in this program over the last couple of years we have done. Probably this has close upon 90 students. So ideally in a group, I prefer to have 5 to 6 the most, right? And this time, due to this large numbers involved, there's no option but to increase the numbers in a group. So some groups may have about 10 and some may have around 9. That's not the ideal situation, but given in the given circumstances, this is probably what we have to do. So we'll try it out and see, because if you increase the number of groups, the time you are going to take on the presentations and all, we might, there'll be a real run on the time frame. So therefore, I'm compelled to go on this basis. But having said that, then since there are more numbers, there will be, the expectation is high because the contribution from each member needs to be added, and then we will be expecting a kind of a very high quality report at the end of the day, right? So my request is for all of you to have give your best and make sure that you put out a very comprehensive and a good quality paper and a product out, so that everybody will benefit. Once this is done, what will happen is each presentation will be shared among everybody. So you will have 10 good areas which are not adequately covered in this program, but at the same time, which is extremely important for a compliance staff or a compliance officer to have an understanding, because it's our, day-to-day bread and butter. So on that note, I will start, and I would like, when these names are called, if your name is called, if you can unmute your mic and say that you are there, then I know that how many people are taking part in the session. And also it will be good for everybody to see the participants, because at this moment, unlike I think this is the first time that we had a totally virtual program. All the previous years, except for last, were totally run on a physical classroom method. And last year, certain sessions we had, but then again, the initial sessions we had on a normal, usual form. So I'll just run through the grouping. And it's going to be a difficult exercise. Right. Anyway, Sandaruan is there. So, so you're in group 1. With that, Tuan Amir.
Yes, I'm here.
All right. Group 1, Kevin Anthony. Kevin Anthony. Okay, you're not there. So other members in the group can make a note of these names, right? Now group 1, 2 are there. Others, you all can make a note of the entire group because you all have to get in touch, right?
Okay, sir, sure.
Then Kumari Madam Pitiya. Is she there? Okay, right. I will just run through. Then Kavinga Javira. Kavingo, Kwinga Javira. I don't know.
Yes, sir.
Kavinga.
Yes, sir.
Kavinga, right?
Yes, sir.
Right. Then Pradeep Subhasingha.
Yes, sir. Amin.
In?
Hello.
Is Pradeep in place?
Yes, sir. I'm Pradeep.
Right. Okay. Then Lakmal Nandasena.
Yes, sir, I am in.
Okay. Lakmal Nandasena. Then comes Yuresh Nadishan. Yuresh Nadishan. No? Right. Make a note of him. Then Lakmal Nandasena, Yuresh Nadishan, Johan Silva.
Yes, I'm
No.
I'm here, sir. I'm here.
Okay. Thanks, Johan. Then Tamali Kavindya. Join. No. Right. So the other group members make a note of the name. I will just run through the names. Sandaruan Gunasekara, Tuan Namir, Kevin Anthony, Kumari Madam Pitiya, Kavinga Jayavira, Pradeep Subhasingha, Lakmal Nandasena, Yuresh Nadishan, Johan Silva, and Tamali Kavindya. You all are in group number 1, and your topic is data protection in the banking and financial industry. Make a note of it. So IBSL will write to you on this, but you can start on it now itself, right? I will give you the details how to do it, right? But for the time being, make a note of your topic. Data protection in the banking and financial industry. Or you can say importance of data protection or ensure. So basically, you have to talk about the how you are ensuring the data protection, what are the problems, what are the challenges, and what do you mean by data protection. So that's your topic, right? Okay, group number 2, opening with Shehara Fernando. Shehara Fernando. Are you in? Right. Madhushika Jayavir. Are you in? Lalit Gunawardana.
Yes, sir, I'm in.
Okay. Make a note of these names, Lalit. The first 2 I didn't receive a response. Shehara Fernando and Madhushika Jayavir. So the IBSL will provide you with the connectivity or the contact details and all. Lalit Gunawardana, then Madhusanka Pereira. Madhusanka Pereira.
I mean, sir.
Okay, good. Thank you. Then Hene Gedara Vitana. Right. Navaratnam Rubini. I know I'm pronouncing these names properly. Navaratnam Rubini. Right. from People's Insurance. Then Tushari Disanayaka.
I am here.
Thank you, Tushari. Purnima Madhushani. Are you in Purnima? Right. Kanishka Veerasekara. Kanishka or Kanishka. Right. Then Tamali Ranasinghe. Is Tamali in? Right. Okay. So Lalit, you are there. I think most of the members didn't respond. Right. So
Yeah, I wrote down the name, sir.
yeah. So please make a note of it. And you are group number 2. Remember your group also. After that, we'll be going by the group name, by the number. Group number 2. Your topic is Islamic banking. Right. So Islamic banking, so basically you can talk about what is Islamic banking and how it differs from the conventional type of banking, what are the products, the deposit product, lending products, and, other related connective activities pertains to that and how it's important and, so that's your topic, Islamic banking. Then the group number 3, Malinga Jayasinghe. Right. Thank you, Malinga. Your next colleague going to be Lakma Lekanayaka. Are you in Lakma? Thank you.
I'm in
Chaturi Sevandi. Chaturi Sevandi. Okay, make a note of it, Malinga and Lakma. Kosala Lakmali. Kosala Lakmali. Right? Nishadini Veeravadana. Shalinta Fernando. Are you in? Yeah.
Nishadini, I am in, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Then Charlita Fernando, Malkanti Fernando.
I am in, sir.
Thank you. Which organization do you represent, Malkanti?
HDFC Bank, sir.
HDFC. Okay. Right. So IBSL will write. I think they have already written to you. If some of you all have not given the details, please do give. Nishadi Virodhan, then Charlita, Malkanti Fernando, then Tushan Hettige, Dilini Almeida, Viraj Kumarage. I'll repeat the names of the group 3. Malinga Jayasinghe, Lakma Lekanayaka, Chaturi Sevandi, Kosala Lakmali, Nishadi Virodhana, Shalinta Fernando, Malkanti Fernando, Tushan Hettige, Dilini Almeida, Viraj Kumarage. Right. So your group is group number 3 and your topic is market abuse. And you can talk about the insider dealing, the fraud prevention and all that. Right. So you can write the topic like market abuse, insider dealing and fraud prevention. Remember, all these are extremely important areas I am bringing in for the benefit of the students so that, though our syllabus or time does not permit us to touch on all this, having a knowledge on all these areas is extremely important for a compliance. Right? So take it very seriously and do it for the benefit of everybody. So 10 topics coming, I am repeating. So you'll get an amazing knowledge which relates or which will support your business, the day-to-day functions when you are into compliance. Right. So that's group number 3. Then group number 4. Right. Tilochana Piyatilak.
I'm in, sir. Tilochana Vidilak.
Tilochana. Sorry, Tilochana. Right. Okay. You are in. You are from which bank?
From National Trust Bank.
National Trust, and which area you handle, Tilochana?
I'm in compliance department, financial compliance risk.
Very good. Right. Okay. You have a financial background?
Yes, I've been with the bank for about 17 years. I've been with the branches of companies.
Excellent, excellent. Right. What I meant was an accounting background. Any accounting qualification?
No, sir. Not at the moment.
Anyway, not necessary, but if you are having it, it will be a added support on the topic you are going to get. Then Lahiru Liyanage. Lahiru Liyanage. Madhushika Bandara. Lakshant, I think Tilochana, you have to make a note. Some of them don't answer, so I don't know whether they are in or not.
I will take them.
Yeah, Tilochana Palpiyatilaka, that's you, Lahiru Liyanage, Madhushika Bandara, then Lakshant Tennapon.
Yeah, I mean, sir.
Okay, thanks, Lakshant. Bhashini Karyavasam, Sandamali Veerapon, in Suranga Disanayaka. Are you in Suranga? Randilu Mendis.
I mean, sir.
You are in Randilu?
Yes, I mean.
Okay, thank you. Chandima or Chandima Atukorala. Are you in Chandima or Chandima Atukorala? Another name. Then Dhananjay Rajakaruna. Right. Okay. So this group is group number 4. I'll repeat the names. Tilochana Piyatilaka, Lahiru Liyanage, Madhushika Bandara, Lakshant Tennapon, Bhashini Karyavasam, Sandamali Veerapon, Suranga Disanayaka, Randilu Mendis, Chandima Atukorala, and Dhananjay Rajakarna. Your topic is going to be impairment based on the IFRS 9, oil case 39 relates to that. So what is the impact of this? What does it mean, right? And how that has affected the industry of banking and finance. What are the requirements to fulfill? So that's your topic, IFRS 9 oil case, IAS 9 oil case 39. Okay, so it's the same, right? Then group number 5, Shamindri Pereira. Are you in Shamindri? Right. No. Bandara Veerasinghe.
I mean, sir.
Thanks, Bandara. Make a note of these names, Bandara. Shamindri Pereira, Bandara Veerasinghe, Sandeepani Kulasiri. Malaka Patiratna, sorry. Malaka Patiratna. Hazina Abdul. Shani Rajakaruna. Shani, are you in? No. Okay. Kumara Aryaratna. Senaka Dizilva. Sandarwan Hapuarachi. Keshan Nagasinghe. So is it only one person who is in this group present today?
I
Right.
guess.
Okay, please make a note of it and then get through to these people. Huh? That's your group is group number 5 and your topic is key regulatory and governance requirements applicable to banks and the non-banks. We need a comparison. Right?
Right.
Make a note. Key regulatory and governance requirements. Key regulatory and governance requirements applicable to banks and non-banks. The comparison. Right?
Right.
This is a fairly straightforward topic. I need a full picture on this, covering the entire regulatory one, though I use the word key. Right? So easy to get the information out. So you need to do a comparison saying, okay, now we say capital adequacy, what is the banking requirement and what is the non-banking requirement, giving reference to the particular direction that deals on it. And of course, different methods are there. Now SRR, what is the direction, how it's calculated, that type of comparison needs to be given. There's no SRR for non-banks. There's a different way of keeping that based on the lending, based on saving, like that. So that type of a comparison needs to be done on basic key regulatory requirements for this, right? So that's group number 5. Then group number 6, Nesha Kumar Dulakshanya.
Yes, I'm in.
Okay, thanks, Dulakshi. Then Jude Krishanta.
I am in, sir.
Thanks, Jude. Darshana Bandara.
I'm in, sir.
Christopher Paul. Is Christopher Paul here? I thought we can listen to a song also, right? Huh? During presentation, we'll get Christopher to sing a song also, right? Okay. Christopher Paul, then Sammani Yapa.
Yes, I mean.
Thanks, Sammani. Ramachandran Sivadarshan.
I mean, sir.
Thanks, Ramachandran. Prabodhini Ratnayaka. No. Saranga Sri Vimukti. Then Mekala Sudasingha, Shanaka Malala Sena. So these are the members of group number 6. I'll repeat the name. Neshakuma Dulakshanya, Jude Krishant, Darshana Bandar, Christopher Paul, Sammaniapa, Ramachandran, Sivadarshan, Prabodhini Ratnayaka, Saranga Sri Vimukti, Mekala Sudasingha, and Shanaka Malala Sen. So group number 6, your topic is business continuity management, right? This is basically BCP is main part of it. We're talking about the business continuity management, right? We'll have to talk, have a brief overview of as to what is meant by this and how do you do this and how you put this into practice, right? Not only BCP, BCM. BCP is part of it. That's group number 6. Then comes the group number 7. First name card.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks, first name. Then Ferial Tyagasinha. Frail Tyagasinha. I don't know. Am I pronouncing the name properly? Right. Then Imalka Ratnayaka. In Shehana the Guna Vijaya. Shehana Aishwarya Jagatiswaran. Are you in? No. And Shiranka. I'm in, sir. Thanks, and Kumara Lianage. Are you in? No. Then Indika Rajapaksha. Are you in Indika? No. Prabodha Madhubhashini.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks, Prabodha.
I'm in,
Right.
sir.
Okay, thank you. So I'll repeat the names. First name Kada, Ferial Tyagasingha, Imalka Ratnayaka, Shahana Gunavijaya, Aishwarya Jagatiswaran, and Shiranka. Thanks, and Kumara Lianage, Indika Rajapaksha, Prabodha Madhubhashini. Right. So your group is group number 7. Your topic is SEC, Security Exchange Commission, and CSC, Colombo Stock Exchange, regulatory requirements applicable to banks and listed financial institutions. Right? SEC and CSC regulations applicable to banks and listed financial institution is the topic for group number 7. Okay, right. Then comes group number 8.
Can you please repeat the topic?
Kalpani Vijayasiri. Kalpani Vijayasiri, Praveen Chiranjaya, Hemaka Pamudita. None of you are here? Mihirani Katu. Hemaka is there. Okay, Hemaka make a note. Kalpani Vijayasiri, Praveen Chiranjaya, Hemaka Pamudita. Next member is Mihirani Katugampala. Are you in Mihirani? No. Chandra Vitanachi. Duminda Jayaratna. Suranga Vikramasinghe. Jeevani Jayavira. And Supun Vimukti.
I am in, sir.
Right. Okay, I'll repeat the names again. Kalpani Vijayasiri, Praveen Chiranjaya, Hemaka Pamudita, Mihirani Katugampala, Chandra Vitanachi, Duminda Jayaratna, Suranga Vikramasinghe, Jeevani Jayavira, Supun Vimukti. So your group number 8, your topic is regulatory structure and powers of the regulator, the international perspective. Right? Basically, these are common, right? So don't only talk about the Sri Lankan scenario. Sri Lankan scenario is also stemming from the international structure. So just talk about the regulatory structure, then the powers of the regulator, the international perspective. Okay, group number 8. Then group number 9, Dilrukshi Feldman. Are you in? Sumudu Gunetti.
I'm in, sir.
Yeah, thanks, Sumudu. Then Susil Kumara.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks,
I'm in.
Susil. Thank you. Chaturanga Sandamal. Chaturanga Sandamal. Hemal Sandakalum.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks, Hemal. Pradeep Rangana. Varuni Shironika. Prasadini Ratnayaka. Prasadini. Charuni Vikramaratna. Right.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks, Charuni. So repeat the names again. Dilrukshi Feldman, Sumudu Gunetti, Susil Kumara, Chaturanga Sandamal, Hemal Sandakalu, Pradeep Rangana, Varuni Shironika, Prasadini Ratnayaka, and Charuni Vikramaratna. Your topic is ensuring compliance in the new normal conditions arose due to the pandemic.
Can you repeat that, sir? Ensuring compliance.
Ensuring compliance in the new normal conditions. What we are facing today, right, arose due to the pandemic. So how do you carry on business in the given new environment, right? Basically, just an example, like now most of the meetings, the banking activities, all probably done by using the e-platform and the online methods and things like that, right? So what are the probable risks that would arise, and how you would mitigate and then manage these risks in the new normal? So that's the area to think widely and bring your add value to your topic given to you, right?
Sir, can you repeat the first name of the group? Dilrukshi?
Dilrukshi Feldman is spelled like Felthman.
Right. Okay.
Supposed to be from BOC. Contact details they will provide. IBSL will provide the data. Get in touch with them, right? Okay, the topic is correct. We have written down, no?
Okay.
The last group number 10, Kumar Talis. Are you in? Okay. Then Kanishka Samarasekara.
I'm in, sir.
Kanishka. Okay, thanks, Kanishka. Sandun Ratnayaka. Shamika Nanakala. Kalan, thanks, Kalana. Shamika. Kalana Fernando.
I'm in, sir.
Tilipan Kandasamy.
I'm in, sir.
Kanisha Senarat. Kanisha, are you in? No. Aruna Fonseca.
Yes, I am in, sir.
Thanks, Aruna. Pinya Molligod.
I'm in, sir.
Thanks. Right. So this is group number 10. I'll repeat the names again. Uma Thalis, Kanishka Samarasekara, Sandun Ratnayaka, Shamika Nanayakara, Kalana Fernando, Dilipan Kandasamy, Kanisha Senarat, Aruna Fonseca, and Pinya Molligod. Right. So your topic is the new developments in the AML CFT regime, both locally as well as internationally. New developments and challenges. Huh? Right? Somebody
Can you please
making a note?
repeat it, sir?
Yeah. New developments and challenges faced by the financial industry, right, in the AML CFT regime, both locally as well as internationally. So you need to talk about both sides, the Sri Lankan environment as well as the international environment where these new challenges, we have the typologies and the counter typologies, then various international pressure coming, various codes are there, right? And then various mutual evaluations are being carried out. So likewise, what are the challenges faced by this industry, Sri Lankan perspective as well as the global perspective, and what kind of suggestions or the improvements that you can propose from as practitioners, right? So that is group number 10 topic. So we are having 10 groups and 10 topics given. Now your submissions will be in threefold. You need to first give an executive summary, which ideally would be confined to maybe 2 pages of A4 size, 2 pages, right? Then you will have the report written. It shouldn't be less than 2,500 words. So it should have between 2,500 to 4,000 words. It shouldn't be less than 2,500. But if you do this, definitely you will get 2,500 minimum words, and try to be within 4,000. Don't try to exceed 4,000. But that doesn't mean that the quality of the report needs to come down. Quality has to be maintained, right? So between 2,500 to 4,000, short up a little, that's okay. No, never mind. But definitely shouldn't be less than 2,500. Doesn't mean that you should add, rubbish into it and make the number of words more than 2,500. It's not the case. We need to get, and the spacing, the format, letters will be Times New Roman, font size 12, and 1.5 spacing, right? So these are the basic ground rules, the requirement. And you will be given a month's time from now on to make your submission, right? Probably by the 3rd week, I would require the executive summary and the synopsis sent to IBSL. Through them, I will get them, right? Okay. Please make a note. To complete the entire exercise, you will be given 4 weeks from now on. After 4 weeks, we will be taking up the presentations for discussion in this classroom. And you will have the executive summary or a synopsis, which would be confined to not more than two A4 size pages. That will give the crux and the cream of your findings or the presentation or the outlook or the outcome of it, so you can decide how you are going to write the synopsis or the executive summary. And that needs to reach IBSL by the 3rd week from now on, right? So that is the calendar, like 1926. So probably by the first of they may be 2nd or 3rd of October. Before 3rd of October, your executive summary or the synopsis must read. When you are submitting it, cover page, in every submission, you put a cover page and give the name of your topic, give the group number, and give the names of the participants. And I would like, please add a photograph of each participant in every document that you submit. So when I'm taking the presentations, it will be easy for me to identify the party on the screen, right? So executive summary, and then you will have a PowerPoint presentation that you will use to make your presentation, right? PowerPoint slides, the number of slides that you can decide, but in total, we should get the presentation between 20 to 25. Ideally, in 20 minutes, you should finish your presentation, giving the audience an understanding about as to what your outcome and what you're going to say in this in your study, right? So in addition to the synopsis, you will give a PowerPoint presentation, and the final report should reach IBSL by the 4th week, that is by maybe the 10th of October. That has to reach them. And when you're submitting it, a cover page should give in the presentation, the executive summary, as well as in the PowerPoint, should carry the cover page indicating the name of the group, the names of the participants, and their photograph, plus the topic, right? So is this clear? Anybody wants further clarity on this?
So how many slides you are expecting?
That you can decide. I want to this thing. So it has to be, slides need to be in a way that you can make the presentation within 20 minutes, right? So the presentation, sorry.
Everybody of the group has to present, or we can select some people to present and then.
I don't receive you properly. Who is speaking?
Everybody of the group has to present.
Still not clear. Who is speaking there first?
I'm Susil.
Who? Susil. Yes, Susil. Now I hear your name well, but what you're trying to say, I didn't get it.
Sir, that everybody in the group has to present in the presentation.
Yeah. Ideally, in the normal circumstances, I insisted everybody to present, right? But here, now that you have 10 people, I would still say that's up to you. If you want, you can get all 10 to present, or if you minimum five need to present out of the 10, right? Minimum 5 need to present, but the rest of the people should be available on the screen. And I have the liberty to question anybody from the group on anything that relates to the topic. Right? Okay. Just because one does not propose present means the chances are more that non-presenters would get kind of more questions to answer in my questions that I am going to pose. It's up to you. I leave you with that. So there's no harm in all not presenting it, but they will definitely have to answer the questions, including the ones who present. Right?
Okay.
So I give that liberty to the group to decide. You all can decide how you are going to do it, but remember, you will have basically 20 to 25 minutes the most for the presentation, and another 10-15 minutes time we will take for the questions and clarity session. Right? The audience can also make queries on the presentation, just to make the interactions alive. right? The audience can also ask questions about the presentation. So it's a kind of a learning exercise more than this exercise to earn a little marks. This is a learning exercise. So I would really like if you can take it very seriously, because I can vouch and guarantee the amount of benefits the participants are going to get through this exercise if all do it very efficiently and effectively is enormous. It cannot be measured in terms of marks, right? So you will understand what a lot of knowledge you are going to gather if all take part seriously in this exercise. It's a knowledge you are going to get is enormous, right? You got to do a little bit of reading, you got to do a little bit of research, right? And a quality paper needs to come up. So that's the standard, because finally we are putting out a diploma holder in compliance after finishing this, right? So you are going to get 30 marks for this presentation. So certain marks will come on the written submission, and there will be heavy marks will come on the presentation based on the written submission, right? I will always have your written submission by the side, and either query on those or certain areas that you all have failed to capture, I will query on that, because that's the learning. So audience also can question on it by listening to it, and any relevant questions can be posed. So we are going to take have liberty in allocating time for this. As a guideline or a rule, I mentioned this because here the learning is enormous. I can vouch and tell you, you're going to learn a lot. Take this exercise very seriously. End of the day, you will be the winners and not anybody else, right? So on that note, so we will leave it at that. So IBSL will write to you formally on this. And I think now there's nothing more for them to tell. All that have been said. Those who are not present, please convey the message. And IBSL will give you the contact details, the phone numbers, email numbers, and get it. And the other important thing is, let's agree that there aren't any people to ride on somebody else's shoulder, right? This exercise is to learn. At the same time, all have to contribute, all have to actively participate. If one thinks that I can ride on somebody else's shoulder, I think it's not doing justice to the whole exercise, to the whole group, right? And if anybody is not taking part in your collective efforts, the group can tell me, so I will make a note of it when allocating marks, right? You all have to tell. Anyway, the questions I am going to ask, because I have the liberty to question at my liberty, I can question anybody from at the presentation level. So I expect everybody to have the same amount of knowledge on what they are presenting and on the document that they had submitted, right? At times we see the document is submitted by browsing the net and all that, but then when they are presenting, when you ask any question little outside the presentation made based on the document, sometimes they are unable to answer. That means they have not done the learning properly. That has to be avoided. So based on it, the mark will be allocated. So that's how we are going to play the game. And any further questions on it? No, right. So thank you very much.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah.
Excuse me, sir. Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in group 2. My name is Lalit Gunawardana.
Yes, Lalit.
Just for the clarification, asking, sir, this one that in addition to this report, the PowerPoint has to be given. And the both, of course, the 1 month period is given, but for the synopsis and executive summary for the report, it's on the 3rd week, of course, has to be submitted. Am I correct, sir?
That's right. You are perfect. Because the why 3rd week is so that I can read it and get a fair idea and be ready. Because the last minute I will have a tough time in going through all this, right? At least when I get the synopsis, I know the content that's going to be in your, because synopsis has to be done in that way, right? You need to say in the synopsis, in the executive summary, what you are going to discuss in your report, right? So synopsis carries a big weight in this, because when I get the report, probably I may not have much time to very leisurely go through every, but definitely I'm going through. But I'm depending heavily on the synopsis to know what you are going to present in your detailed report as well as in the PowerPoint presentation, right? So synopsis has to be made. That's why I'm calling it in, because without writing the synopsis or without having material for synopsis, you can't definitely develop the report, know the presentation. That's why I'm getting it in the third week, so that you are ready and you will do a systematic job. Take it seriously. I'm once again repeating, and I can vouch the amount of benefit you are going to get. All are going to get is enormous. It's a maximum benefit you will get if you do it perfectly, right? You will get equal amount of knowledge through this exercise in comparison to the rest of the learning you have made through the other in the by following the lectures. So you are going to double your benefits by doing this exercise, and you will agree with me once this is done and if it's done properly. Anything else? Have I answered your question, Lalit?
Yes, sir. Is it possible as to having your contact number in case of further clarifications?
Yeah, you can just I'll tell to give my you can write down my mobile number. It's not 773 770 434. Right. So only thing, I will not be able to answer your calls every now and then. If you can just drop me a text or an email or something, so then if possible I will answer. If I don't answer, drop me a text or email or coordinate with IBSL, so they will collate everything and let me know. I might miss otherwise in between when there are large number of calls coming, right? Especially when your numbers are not registered in my phone, so I won't know who the caller is. So you can call me. If I don't answer, either drop me a text or try to come through IBSS, so they will collate and let me know that so and so is wanting to get in touch. So I'll find time to get back. Okay. Yeah, somebody else was talking.
Thank you so much, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So
There's another voice I heard.
I'm from Group 7. The topic was not clear. Can you just read it
Group
again?
7. Yeah.
Yes.
SEC and CSE regulations applicable to banks and listed financial institutions. SEC means Security Exchange Commission, and CSE, Colombo Stock Exchange regulations applicable to banks and listed financial institutions. Okay. So here again, very easy to get at the details. So I want a total comprehensive kind of a submission from you, which is going to benefit the rest of the participants as well as you are. Right? Do a comparison, publish it, SCC, CSC, if you go through, you will see more or less there are very much similarities, but there are certain additional ones. Right? When you study it, you will understand. So I want them to be clearly understood, because then others can also benefit from that. Okay. Right. Anybody else? No. Shall we get on with our present topic then? Okay, right. So probably you didn't, none of you all heard what I said now after the reverting to the presentation, right?
No, sir. Yes, sir. No, right. Sir. No, sir. No.
Okay, right. So I was just going through. Yeah. Basically, I think I'm now running through the slides, but without slides, I took you all through the what you should do. So successfully managing the regulatory supervisory visit is a critical part of the CEO's role. So we agreed and we understood it. Importance of the regulatory visit examination. Also, we understood how positively you need to look at it and what importance is there and what are the benefits you get out of it. That's your attitude basically. The importance of provide the information and the document requested in a timely manner. So we discuss in detail all that. Then prompt and well presented pre-visit information can establish a strong start to the regulatory visit. We discuss in detail. I told you, if you do that, you have won 50% of the game. If you fail it, you are going to ask for problems, and it's going to be a continuous struggle thereafter because it's going to cut a negative picture at the inception itself. Then you will definitely have issues. It is important that the CEO is familiar with the info provided. So you have to be familiar. That's why I go back to my definition. Consultant physician's role. So you need to have a fair idea of what's happening all over, have that knowledge. Then it's easy. Then you know what's being provided, right? So impairment or the provisioning or whatever it is, the today's context, the moratorium, all this information they will want. So you need to understand what this is. Basically, when it is presented, you can always refer it to the process owner or the information owner to give further details, but you need to know some idea about it. Then only you can provide it and deal with the regulator in a successful manner. Then CEO should advise the relevant staff that they may be subject to an interview with the regulator. That's the interview that I was insisting. Please get that interview arranged. Then you can solve lots of issues. If possible, you try to get in touch with you also be party to that interview when the key areas are being discussed with the relevant the process owner or the business owner, the vertical owner. Once the regulatory visit is underway, CEO should liaise on a daily basis with the visiting team. So I told you, early morning when they come out, just liaise with them and ask, okay, whether they are okay, whether the information is intact, whether they're having any issues, and finishing also, just have a chat like that. Then I think things are going to be much more effective. Then the finder CEO should, whereas possible, seek to agree with the regulator that they will produce a draft report so that the entity has the opportunity to comment or respond. Right? Generally, this happens. The Sri Lankan regulator always sends a draft report, but I have gone a step one ahead, and to have those, the exit meetings also they have, but it's important to have that the final discussion with the process owner on that particular area, because from the team there are different officers handling different areas. So before they collate everything and put it in the main report, that particular area, the examiner who will handle that area, if they can sit with have a dialogue with the process owner, if you also can be party to it, most of the things can be sorted and agreed upon if there are issues. Right? So that will avoid issues like, okay, they're saying it was not there, then this party says no, it was there. So that type of things can be avoided. The compliance visit should be welcome as an independent health check. That's exactly what I said. It has to be welcome as a benefit, as an independent health check, which provides the bank a good feedback on the performance of discharging regulatory compliance. So you need to treat it and welcome it and take it on a very positive note, to say that, because it's going to give you a help. It's like a health screening, right? Before you end up with the total issue or a problem or a sickness or illness, like as you do your screening, to do regular checkup to know where you are going. This is a kind of a health check that to avoid further aggravated situations or issues turning more, serious, that you can help by taking this in a positive note. Right. Creating an effective compliance culture, finally. Doing all this. Right now, remember, we were discussing the role of the compliance officer. Right? Various things we discussed. The different, functions, the different skills, do's, undos, commissions, omissions, then certain proactive action, prudential regulations, right? All this we discuss, having the systems, having the compliance program, the risk-based approach, all that we have discussed. So finally, all this is done is to design an internal compliance culture, creating a good, robust compliance culture within the organization. So this is the final stage in designing an internal compliance work is to have the culture. So I would put it slightly differently, because by doing all this, you will be inculcating or rather establishing that compliance culture within the organization. So this cannot be achieved overnight, thus requires continual right behaviors and the attributes being consistently demonstrated. So the compliance culture is something that you cannot just, plug and run. There's nothing like that. You cannot do that. It's a continuous series rather than outcome of a series and a continuous effort, right? That you put in will make sure that there's a good compliance culture that's been developed within the organization. So it's a continuous effort with the right behaviors, and finally, the success of that will depend on how you have approached it in developing this so-called compliance culture within the organization. So it's an activity that which spans over a period, a continuous set of behaviors, continuous set of action, constant monitoring, constant relationship that you have to maintain will finally make sure whether you're going to do your task of creating the culture, compliance culture. The conducting the bank's business keeping in line with the ethics and the good governance principles are an essential prerequisite. Right? If you want to have your compliance culture, a good compliance culture within the organization, conducting the bank business keeping in line with the ethics and good governance principles. Two different things. Ethics and good governance goes hand in hand, right? There are certain ethics that you have to follow, right? You might have the direction, the rule, regulation, everything, but it has to be enriched and supported with the ethical behavior, right? Then only you will have the desired outcome. Therefore, it is a prerequisite that you have to keep the business done in a compliant manner with the ethical behavior brought into the system. Ethical behavior by everybody, starting from the board down to the corporate management, then to the staff. All need to behave ethically. And the good governance principles, which we are going to learn in probably the next module. What is good governance, right? So the good governance and the ethical behavior or the ethics will be treated as prerequisites for you to have the compliance culture, right? You don't understand prerequisite. You need to have these things essentially in order to meet it. So therefore, good governance and the ethical behavior are prerequisites. So the right culture encourages employees to buy in. Employees to buy in to make the framework operative, not just because of fear of criminal or regulatory repercussions, but due to the appreciation of benefits such culture can deliver to the bank, its customers, employees, and all the stakeholders as a whole. So I think I mentioned this also several times in my few presentations before. You got to buy your staff in, buy them in. How do you buy them in? By explaining, making them to understand the benefits of it. By making them to understand the benefits. That's how you can buy them in. I remember the example that I took, the KYC. How do you buy them in? By explaining them the process of it. In addition to the regulatory requirement, it's going to help you in the business. So it's to be treated it as a business tool before a regulatory requirement. So I explained to you, it's a business tool. KYC is a business tool. Without KYC, you can't do business. You can't do the cross-selling. Nowadays, the buzzword cross-selling. Everybody has to do cross-selling, including the non-frontliners, right? So different banks have different approaches or the policies, but generally, all have to do the cross-selling. Especially the frontliners have to do cross-selling. For you to do that, you need to know the KYC. You need to understand the customer. So just an example. So if you do it, that's fine, right? So you got to buy them in by explaining them the benefits of doing it the right way. These are the benefits. Or these are basically, you can talk about the downside of it. If you don't do, these are the repercussions, right? So that's also a benefit. Avoiding a repercussion is a benefit, right? So put it in a positive way and explain them why you should be doing this and what are the benefits. As a result, you can buy them in to have a good compliance system, a good compliance culture within the organization, right? So rather than creating fear in the minds of people, if you can buy them in, so it's a positive approach, so you can create it. So that's what this slide says. So in conclusion, right, effective internal compliance system must pay close attention to the regulator's overall approach and priorities, as well as to the specific risks the banks would encounter resulting from the changes that may take effect in the regulatory landscaping and also in the markets. Now, three very important areas are being touched in this bullet. Effective internal compliance system must pay close attention to the regulatory overall approach and the priorities. Overall approach and the priorities. So basically, you need to know what the regulator wants. Then you need to know what his overall approach is and what are his priorities, right? Having known that, then you need to know exactly what are the specific risks the bank would encounter in doing business in the given scenario. Specific areas which you would identify by putting it on a risk matrix, having a risk-based approach and identify what are the priority most risks that you need to cover. All this we discuss in this module in detail. How to identify them, how to prioritize them, how to assess them. All that we discuss. So, firstly, you need to know the approach and the priorities of the regulator and basically what the requirements are. Then you need to know the specific risk that the bank is going to face or your financial institution is going to face. Right. Thirdly, it's important to know there's nothing static here. Things do change. Economic landscape changes, rapidly changing these days. So you need to go, in the same pace of these changes, right? If you don't go in the same pace of the change, either you will fall by the wayside or you will, fall in the run and then get stamped and die, right? Okay. So you have to be fully aware of the approach, the priorities of the regulator, then the specific risk you are going to face, and also you need to have an understanding about the ever-changing economic landscaping of the country. Today is the pandemic. Every day is changing. The markets are closed. Banks are virtually, not operating fully functionally and having to do a lot of work from home. These changes you have to understand. So what are the special risks that we would face due to this new normal? That's a topic I gave to one of the group, right? In the new normal, right? I think group number 9. Ensure compliance in the new normal condition across the arose due to the pandemic. So it's important of the compliance. That's what I gave that topic. Because remember, all these topics are very well thought and designed and given. So every topic is going to add value and flavor to you in your day-to-day compliance function. right? So then the compliance department need to keep pace with the regulatory changes and understand how such changes would affect the bank. So in addition to the changes taking place in the economic landscape, you have to keep pace with the regulatory changes that are taking place, which could be the result of the change in the economic landscape, and understand how such changes would affect your bank. You need to know it, right? Now there are moratoriums coming one on top of the other. What are the risks? Right? That group number 9 can take that also, new normal. So what are the risks we are taking? So many moratoriums are coming up. What risk are we facing? How do we avoid that? I want that group to understand all this. That's just one aspect. There are other things also. Right? What are the new risks that we are going to face by doing business online? How can we overcome that? What are the challenges we are having? What are the solutions available? And when you are thinking of the solution, how financially, some of them are, highly capital intensive solutions. How do you overcome that? So these are the things I want that group to think and come back. So the last slide also talks about it. Compliance demand need to keep pace with the regulatory changes and understand how much changes would affect the bank. Finally, one thing that is constant is that compliance arrangements need to be kept under continual review to ensure that they fully satisfy the prevailing requirements. So it's an ongoing thing. There's no end to it. You can't say, okay, we are done compliance and then just, cross fingers and happily go to bed. No. It's a continuous thing that you got to keep on doing, keep on assessing, keep on reviewing. Then only you will do it properly. Because the world is changing faster than that you and I think. Economic landscape is changing extremely fast these days, especially these days. Every day there's a new challenge that comes up. Right? So finally, one thing that's constant is the compliance arrangement need to be kept under continual review to ensure that they fully satisfy the prevailing requirement. So with that, I think we have come to the end of this role of compliance officer, right? It's a vast area. I think I have touched as per the time given allocated to give you a full flavor of this so that you can, because this is the cream of your job if you are in compliance, right? If you put these things into practice, just make an evaluation to see, are we actually doing it the way that we learned, or are we doing it better, or are we doing it shorter? If that's the case, what are the gaps and how do we bridge the gap, and what approach should we have to bridge the gap? So that has to be your thinking when you get back to your work environment. Right. Any questions up to this, please? Any questions up to this? No questions? Are you all full clear on this? So you will get, at least 3 good questions from this area, minimum 2. And ideally 3 questions will come, right? Out of the 5 questions you are going to face, you are going to answer 3. So there will be 3 questions generally coming from this. But those questions are not straightforward, direct questions like a O-level paper, right? The standard is much higher. So you will be tested on your knowledge and the ability to apply yourself in the practical situations, studied or rather enriched with the contents or the theory or the concept that you learned in this module. So that's the way that I have given you a few hints, the type of questions you would get, and probably the way that you should answer. That's what I said, to make notes. So there's no way that you can just learn by heart a particular slide and come and answer. It's not possible. You got to mix things from different slides and get the facts straight, and then put it in the question paper relating to the question that is raised. Right. So that's basically that's from me for the moment on this. Unless you have questions, we can wind up. Any questions? No. Right. So, okay, we will wind up for today. Then probably next week we'll start on the governance, the corporate governance one, and meet up next Sunday at 8:45. Thank you, and once again I remind you to get started with your assignment. It takes time if you have to do a good job. It takes time. So get to your drawing board, get started with it. I'll give you the approach, discuss with them, and probably ask everybody to come up with their certain proposal how we are going to go ahead by doing a little bit of reading on this topic individually, maybe during the day 1, 2, and 3, and then start developing. That's how a group work will work, right? All have to do their own research initially, right? Okay, that's the best way to do. Go through, do your browsing, do your research, try to do your reading, try and get understand, and then come up with your facts, put all heads together, and then see how you are going to proceed further. Right? Okay, thanks everybody. So we will wind up for today and meet up next week.